Greetings and welcome to this short session of thinking on contemporary trends and events. There is a significant change in the culture of farming in Kerala. I remember my boyhood days. Everybody used to cultivate what little land they had. Farming was an integral part of the life in Kerala. Perhaps not in cities as much as in other areas. Of late, Kerala is concentrating, or the people of Kerala are concentrating mainly on two cash crops. The other items of cultivation are neglected, so much so we have to import quite a bit of what we consume daily from adjoining states, particularly Tamil Nadu. And most of us know that in the process we are consuming deadly levels of poison, but that doesn't seem to concern anybody. Keralites will not farm their land. Much of the land is lying fallow. Though the government evolves schemes to make sure that arable land is utilized, the schemes do not seem to make much progress, though I have to admit that some improvements have happened. But that does not change my fundamental observation that the two principal cash crops in Kerala are controversies and scandals. For the last 10 years, for example, the discussion and media landscape of Kerala has been dominated by two women. They are known as Sarita and Swapna. I don't think anybody in Kerala has had the kind of media attention, public focus, and attention that these two ladies cornered. Their only point of distinction being that they lend themselves eminently to the manufacturing of scandals. And Keralites lapped it up and they refused to let go on it, but that's not my main subject. Let me stick today to the line of controversies. It's as though Keralites cannot live without controversies, and therefore political leaders also oblige the general public by lending themselves to controversies. And the latest in the series is something that's now widely discussed, and I would say compulsively discussed in Kerala, as a conspiratorial attempt to denigrate Hinduism. Let me state my position right at the outset in order to avoid misunderstanding, because people are very quick to misunderstand, which is another aspect of our public life. People judge each other in terms of preconceived notions, and therefore they think that this is what the other person has said, or they think that this is what this other person is out to do. For example, recently I posted a video which contains some general reflections on violence. I did not make a single reference to any religion other than Christianity. My overall topic was religion and violence. There is absolutely no reference in that video to any other religion except Christianity. But one of the responses I got in the response column is that I'm afraid you are trying to attack Hinduism, or I suspect that your intention is to discredit Hinduism. Now, that's farthest from my thought. There's absolutely no material in what I shared or what I posted through the video on my YouTube channel. But for a particular person, and there are many like him, I'm just citing one example, it seems as though I'm out to malign a particular religion or discredit a particular religion. On what basis such suspicions are entertained, I do not know. And if you were to ask the people who are entertaining these apprehensions, they themselves will not be able to give you an explanation. Therefore, please don't ask them. Why embarrass people when we know already that they'll be absolutely tongue-tied if such a question is posed with. Now, my position is this. As a matter of policy and principle, I do not make statements about any religion other than my own. Secondly, I do not think it's my duty to reform any religion other than my own. I believe that each person must take care of his own religious constituency. I have been influenced for a very long time by the very wise and beautiful statement by the German literary giant and quasi-philosopher Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Malayalis, of course, pronounce that name as Goethe. It is Goethe. He said, if only everyone would clean his own doorstep, the entire city will be clean. So I should hold myself responsible only for my doorstep, which I try to clean, not very efficiently, but in the process, of course, I end up being discredited by the custodians of my religion, which is quite all right, which is anticipated. Therefore, I have no grievance on that count. Now, having made my position clear on the matter, let me now say that the latest controversy has been supplied to Kerala very generously by the present Speaker of the Kerala Assembly. His name is A.N. Shamsheer. I will not take his name every now and then. Hereafter, I will only refer to him as the Speaker of the Kerala Assembly. What did he do? He was addressing a gathering of students in a school. And in the course of his address, he exhorted them in light of Article 51A of the Indian Constitution, which lists 9 responsibilities that every citizen should take seriously, one of which being the duty to cultivate, to acquire for oneself, as well as spread the scientific temper and the capacity to think critically. This is stated as, it is mandated as a citizenship responsibility in Article 51A of the Constitution. The Honorable Speaker referred to this article and then said that education must address this reality. And then, of course, he went on to make a reference which has become the object of controversy, which is, in order to illustrate his point, he referred to a statement made earlier by the Prime Minister of India that the shape of Lord Ganapathy is proof that ancient India had perfected the art of surgery, art and science of surgery to such an extent that plastic surgery was popular then. What's the evidence? The evidence is the particular shape of Lord Ganapathy. I have no opinion in this matter because I'm not competent to comment on it. I'm just referring to a statement made by the Honorable Prime Minister of the country. And this is the reference that the Honorable Speaker himself made. Then he also made a further reference to the idea that aviation science was highly advanced in ancient India because there is a reference to Pushpak Viman, that is an aircraft made with flowers. How efficient, how trustworthy, how airworthy an aircraft made of flowers is. Again, I have no competence to comment on it. I'm not an aviation engineer. I leave it to worthies who are better informed on the subject than I am. So the speaker, in the course of his talk in the school, made a reference to these things. And then he classified them as myths. He classified them as myths and said that there is a need to proceed from myths to science. Myths to science. Now, it is this statement that has provoked a lot of righteous indignation on the part of those who feel that Hinduism has been attacked by the speaker. Now, the BJP predictably was quick to jump into the fray. They are, of course, very keen to make political capital out of it. At this time, we are reminded of the statement by the then president of the Kerala unit of BJP, who is now the governor of a particular state, that the Shabarimala issue, whether or not women between the age of 10 and 50 should be allowed into the presence of Lord Ayyappa, who is the deity in Shabarimala. He said it's a political gold mine, we must make the capital use of it. This, of course, this video leaked and it became a matter of public discussion at that time. Given that political alertness and the smartness to make capital out of every possible issue, which is the duty of a political party, whether you like it or not, political smartness means that you're ever on the prowl to take advantage of any opportunity, good, bad, or indifferent. If you are a saint, you will have no foothold in politics. I don't have to explain this. So, when this issue came up, predictably, BJP jumped into the fray and it has assumed the mantle, the self-assigned role of being the defender and the protector of the Hindu faiths. And close in the heels of the BJP stalwarts came the statement by perhaps the foremost leader of the Nair society in Kerala, Sukumaran Nair, who is the General Secretary of the Nair Service Society, NSS, which commands some political influence. So this is where it stands. Now, my brief analysis of the situation, and I will not be long with it. Should the Honorable Speaker have said what he has said, or should he have avoided it altogether? Now, I'm now going to talk to you as someone who has taught literature over 40 years, and you know that no literature, especially English literature, can be taught without sound grounding in mythology. You cannot teach English literature without thorough knowledge of Greek mythology, for example. In fact, mythology of various cultures, including Indian mythology, as part of the undergraduate syllabus in Delhi University. At least one Indian epic is prescribed as text to be learned. Now, there is a Greek epic prescribed, Iliad by Homer. All these are largely made up of mythologies. The early sections of the Bible contain mythology. So there is no religious tradition, there is no epic tradition, there is no literature. In fact, there is no psychology without mythology. If you know, the great European psychologist Gustav Carl Jung, derived many of his amazing psychological insights from a deep study of Indian mythology. He visited India. He was deeply influenced by India. In fact, he had great respect for Hindu mythology, Hindu religion, Hindu philosophy, though he came from a very sturdy European Protestant background. His father was a Christian priest. There was a great tradition of Christianity from which he hailed. In spite of all that, like a good, enlightened soul, he was profoundly appreciative of the great merits of the Indian tradition of literature, of theology, of scripture, of philosophy. He was an ardent admirer. He actually wanted to meet with Ramana Maharshi. Unfortunately, that meeting did not take place. And when he went back to Switzerland, he said that he did not miss Ramana Maharshi, by which he did not mean that it was inconsequential that he did not meet him. What he meant was that even though the physical meeting did not take place, he still met with Ramana Maharshi on a higher plane. However, that is not my main subject. It may not go into too many details in this, because we'll then lose track of the main topic. Now, I would say, as someone who knows mythology, up to a point, I don't claim any special knowledge. I'm not an expert on anything at all. Please don't misunderstand. as a person who is acquainted with the domain of mythology as well as the discipline of interpreting scriptures, particularly my scripture, which is the Bible, I would say this, that as far as possible, please refrain from commenting on somebody else's scriptures and somebody else's mythology for the simple reason that is highly unlikely that you have understood it. As someone who has tried my level best to understand Christianity over half a century, I have to say this to you with all honesty that I cannot claim to have reliable and optimum understanding of the Christian scriptures. Then what about other scriptures? Now, to illustrate the extent to which even highly educated, scholarly, enlightened souls can go horribly wrong while commenting on the theology or the customs or the texts or the myths of other religions, let me give you just one illustration. I can give you hundreds of illustrations, but again, paucity of time not allow me to do that. I'll give you one illustration. Perhaps you would know that Maharshi Dayanand is somebody for whom I have great respect. I've written a lot about Maharshi Dayanand. I have contributed chapters to books published, especially from Guru Kangadi University, on Maharshi Dayanand. I used to give talks on Maharshi Dayanand and his spiritual vision and its relevance to contemporary India. And I have to say that I was a sought-after speaker in a particular section of the Arya Samaj movement. Arya Samaj split into two. They are at loggerheads with each other. One of those two sections always invited me to address them. I have conducted workshops for their volunteers, so on and so forth. But in spite of my profound respect for Swami Dayananda Saraswati, or Maharshi Dayananda as I call him, Maharshi went horribly wrong. If you read Satyartha Prakash, his classic text, it can be titled as the light of truth, the light of truth, Satyartha Prakash. Maharshi Dayananda says something incredibly childish. He says that the Christian God is non-vegetarian. And what is the basis on which he says this? The basis is the Old Testament story in the book of Genesis, the story of Cain and his brother Abel offering sacrifices to God. Cain offered the sacrifices of agricultural produce. Abel offered sacrifices of animals. God accepted Abel's sacrifice, which means that God is non-vegetarian. Now, this is how crude it can be and how wide off the mark you can be. Even though you are a scholar, even though you are an enlightened soul, you can still go horribly off the track when you comment on the symbols, the myths, the scriptural texts of others. I'm sure you will have your own illustrations to corroborate this point further. So, as a general principle that I comment to those who view this video, I would say, to the extent possible, absolutely refrain from making casual references and comments on the symbols and myths and scriptures of other religions, because you simply know not, you have no idea what the meaning is. And it's particularly tricky when it comes to Hinduism, because Hinduism, Hindu scriptures, Hindu mythology, Hindu traditions, Hindu Puranas are all full of very complex symbols, highly complex symbols. Decoding each of these symbols is not an easy thing. I have my own understanding of why Lord Ganapathy is in that shape, but I will not venture to state in public, even though what my understanding is not derogatory at all. So the first principle I want to suggest to everyone, in light of this controversy and the bad blood that's now spreading from place to place, please refrain from making impetuous, unenlightened, baseless or inadequately formed ideas about other people's scriptures, symbols, myths, stories, Puranas, traditions, etc. That's the first thing. Secondly, If you want to spread the scientific culture, scientific temper, and the spirit of criticism, etc., there are far better ways of doing it. For example, it was all right for the Honorable Speaker to make a reference to Lord GANAPATHY. What he should have done was not to say that this is all myth. He should have said, well, if we approach this myth scientifically, this could possibly be the meaning of it. Now, don't tell me that if you approach a myth scientifically, that is a proper intellectual rigor, you'll get no meaning out of it. Because this is where my training as a reader of myths comes very handy. The most important thing about myths is that every myth contains within itself a profound insight. Whether you are able to read the insight or not, whether you are aware of the insight or not, the fact is that there is a treasure house of insight inside every myth, every story, every mythological story. Now, it's your problem if you can't understand it. So, the right way to approach this is to say, well, this is deemed a myth, but if you have the scientific temper, this is how it would read. But even then, the custodians of religion will raise cudgels against you and rattle the swords, saber rattling as it is called, because they themselves don't understand the religion that they think they are protecting. What the BJP should have done, what Sukumaran Nair as the General Secretary or the Pope of the Nairs in Kerala, the Supreme Leader of the Nair Service Society, NSS, what he should have done is to have offered a public lecture thrown open to everyone on the profound meaning of Lord Ganesha as a spiritual symbol. That's what BJP should have done. It was a great opportunity for both the BJP and Sukumaran Nair to capture the imagination and to influence the intellect of Kerala with a spiritual idea. They squandered, they wasted a glorious opportunity. But again, I'm not surprised because this approach, this positive, creative approach to a public situation is completely underdeveloped in Kerala. In fact, in the whole of this country, which is our great tragedy. I would call upon everyone who listens to me through this video to realize this fact that in our preoccupation with becoming zealous guardians with the use of violence alone of religious traditions, we have become illiterate, we have become utterly ignorant of the beauties, the depths and the profundities of what we think we know and profess. We don't. I have discussed this with hundreds of my fellow Christians, including priests. The most fundamental and obvious aspects of Christianity. Let me say this to you, not even 10% of Christians know even the basics of their own faith. Leave alone the basics of other people's faith and their theology, their symbolism, etc., etc. So, the problem here is that a vertical split is created between myth and science. Now, this is what is called the myth of science. Science itself can be very superstitious. Science can be very fundamentalist. Scientific fundamentalism is even more dangerous than religious fundamentalism. People don't realize it. So, the scientific temper is greatly relevant to religion. In fact, in my latest book titled Beyond Religion, Imaging a New Humanity, I've argued for a reintegration of religion and reason, faith and science. It's eminently possible to do that. If we do that, many of the evils that are plaguing our society, particularly this curse of communal violence, which is now spreading to the length and breadth of India, like the metastasis of cancer, will end. We need to be scientific in practicing our religions, our faiths. It can be so. In fact, if you look at the great luminaries who were the main inspirations behind the formation of these religious traditions, you'll find that they were experts in the science of the spirit. The science of the spirit. Now here it is appropriate for me to mention the title of Gandhi's autobiography, which is The Story of My Experiments with Truth. What does Gandhi mean by this? Why does he use the word experiment? Do you think anyone else who was writing a book on pursuing the path of truth would use the word experiments, which is a scientific term? Have you ever seen anyone using the term experiment while writing about religion? I haven't. Gandhi was alone, Gandhi was unique, and Gandhi was far ahead of his times. In choosing that title, Gandhians themselves have not paid any attention to the amazing significance of the use of this word experiment in the title of his autobiography. Gandhi understood what I am telling you today, that we can be scientific in our approach to and our practice of religion. That is our citizenship responsibility. Our citizenship responsibility is not to become atheists. Our citizenship responsibility is not to belittle the beliefs of others or even the traditions of others. Our citizens' responsibility as people belonging to an enlightened democratic culture characterized by scientific temper, the spirit of inquiry, and the capacity for responsible criticism is that we are scientifically disciplined in our mind in understanding and practicing our respective religious traditions. If we do that, there will definitely be harmony among the various religious spiritual traditions in India. Only then will become Indian secularism viable. Otherwise, as I already stated in one of my earlier videos, communalism will infect the religious pluralism of India, and India will become a battleground of religions. And it's a nightmarish prospect, and I pray to God that it may not happen. But unfortunately, there are alarming symptoms already, and therefore it is appropriate for me to share these very fundamental truths with all of you. And I pray that you become force multipliers in sharing these insights with other people. Please share this video with as many people as you can, because there are still well-meaning people in our country, but these insights don't reach them, and therefore they are more influenced by mischief mongers who want to practice on their susceptibilities and use them as mindless tools in the practice of self-destructive, self-denigrating violence, which is a great pity. So the Honorable Speaker of the Kerala Assembly should have been scientific. It was a great opportunity for him to demonstrate how the scientific temper would have operated in relation to certain mythologies. And it can be done in a very positive spirit. You don't have to use science in order to attack religion, which is another superstition. It's a very unenlightened attitude. You do what you want, no matter how science progresses. Religion is here to stay. The only thing we can do is to enable people to move from superstitious, obscurantist religion of blind faith to the liberating spirituality of the scientific temper of mind, understanding realities in light of reason and common sense, discovering commonality of the commonality of our predicament as members of the human family, so on and so forth. After all these suggestions already exist. For example, the Hindu philosophy, which is tremendously exciting, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the invitation to see the whole of the created order as a shared home for every one of us. So we are here, brothers and sisters. But all that is sidelined, and only material for communal quarrel is foregrounded, and everybody is ready to pick up a quarrel. And in the process, the very spirit of the religious tradition to which we belong is corrupted in the process of defending it. That's the most tragic irony I can think of, and that's the reason why I'm sharing these thoughts with you. So, the thing to do is not to ridicule mythology. The thing to do is to read mythology with a scientific bent of mind, and without any prejudice, without any preconceptions, without any negativity or bias, so that we become seekers together of whatever is good beautiful and true in every tradition. That to me is the hallmark of the scientific temper of mind and the spirit of inquiry. Together we seek what is the best that we can derive from this tradition, that tradition, every tradition. Every tradition has sparks of light or patches of light or nuclei of light in them. And we need those lights, these eternal values, ideals, great insights into the mystery of life. We cannot dispense with them. This is the reason why, in spite of all secularism in the world, the hold of religion on people is deepening. Unfortunately, it is not true religion. It is obscurantist, superstition-ridden, unhelpful, divisive, parochial religiosity, and which brings out the worst from religious traditions, obscuring its heart of light. And I consider that a great tragedy. So, rather than turn this into a controversy, let's turn this into an occasion to realize that there is a far better approach to a situation like this. I request, through this video, I request both Shre Sukumaran Nair and the topmost leadership of the BJP in Kerala to organize a series of public lectures, and I will attend each one of them, on the religious, spiritual, philosophical, cultural significance of Lord Ganesha, and particularly the mythological insights embedded in the particular shape that is ascribed to him, including the vehicle that Lord Ganesha is associated with. What that vehicle is and all that, I am not going to say, because I leave that to people who know better than me. But I have some information on this, otherwise I wouldn't have mentioned this to you. So I look forward to a positive turn in the present state of affairs, so that we don't become, immature, petty, infantile, quarreling people who have no sense of dignity in public life, who are just waiting for an opportunity to start beating the breast and crying, grievance mongering people. There is a very expressive proverb in Malayalam. So Malayalam language is very beautiful because its proverbs are very picturesque. It says, there was a dog waiting for any opportunity to start whining, crying. What happened? A coconut fell on its head. That's the worst could have happened. A coconut is one of the biggest nuts, as you know. If a coconut falls on your head, you're not likely to survive, to participate in the controversies that are being daily manufactured in Kerala. As I said, that's the greatest agriculture, the cash crop in Kerala. You will not be able to enjoy these cash crops if a coconut falls on your head. So the proverb says that on the head of a dog that was only looking for opportunities to whine, a coconut fell. So what happens? You can imagine the concept. So now this is a very self-demeaning thing. We must give up on all these childish, puerile, despicable posturing and attitude, as though a religion needs to be defended from somebody. The funniest thing, in fact, the cheapest idea that I can come across is that my God needs to be defended by me. My religion needs to be defended by me. I have only one duty, that is to live my religion. If I will live my religion, 1,000 armies cannot destroy it. It's only when I do not live my religion, I really have no value for my religion, and yet I want to use my religion as my label of identity, that I'm hypersensitive to any statement being made about my religion, because I'm very insecure about my religion. I have no faith in my own religion. I have absolutely no difficulty with anybody saying anything in the world about Christianity. Not because I don't care for Christianity, but because I have absolute faith in the teachings of Jesus. And I know, and I've stated this upfront in public, that there is a widening gulf between the teachings, role model and teachings of Jesus Christ and what the church has come to be. In fact, one has become nearly the opposite of the other. I have absolute faith in the relevance, the irreducible, imperishable relevance of the teachings of Jesus Christ. And therefore, even if 1,000,000 people are to shout standing all around me that Jesus is this, Jesus is like that in the most pejorative sense, I'm not going to feel upset at all. Rather, I'll feel sympathetic. I'll feel profound pity towards these people who are baying at Jesus, because it's a public display of their pathetic ignorance. So I commend these thoughts to you, my dear friend. A great deal more to be said about it, as you know, but again, we must keep a discipline of time. I conclude my thoughts. Again, I request you to share these thoughts with whoever you can, so that good sense prevails in our land and there will be peace in our midst. Thank you.